How difficult was it for you, just all of this right now coming in? I know, it's a lot of logistics, right? Just family traveling together, but
Right.
at the end of the day, when you're going to bed, you're here for a whole different reason, right? How difficult was it for you?
To be honest with you, the hecticness of this is helping handle all of that. You know, at the end of the day, I told my wife recently that I grew up with my mom and dad and my brother at the kitchen table every night, and at my home, dinner was at 6 o'clock, and if you missed it, you missed dinner. So we were there very regularly, and we've lost my parents already, and I told my wife the next morning after we found out that Dwight passed away that, you know, I'm the only one sitting at that table now, and it stings a lot more than I anticipated.
How was the phone call or the conversation when Dwight first told you about his illness?
To my recollection, he cried that night, and he told me that the doctor had asked him to come in tomorrow and to bring his wife. And Dwight's reply was, "That doesn't sound good," and the doctor said, "It's not." And he told me he's pretty sure that what he's going to tell me is that he has ALS. And he told me he hadn't called anybody else yet, and he had a few people that were on the short list that he wanted to talk to. And he did that evening. But this, you know, in our family, the first thought is, well, let's fix it, let's cure it. And as gut wrenching or just a punch in the gut as that was, there was still an overwhelming desire of, okay, what do we do next? You know, how do we do this? How do we handle this? And Dwight had that as well. I mean, he had a lot of fight in him. He did used to tell me that he was frustrated with this disease because he would always say, "Give me something I can fight." And in, you know, this one, there's no rhyme or reason who it affects. It can't be diagnosed. You eliminate everything else. And then there's no cure, there's no treatment. It's just, there's so much information that is unknown about this disease, and I think that frustrated Dwight a lot, that he wanted something that he could fight, but he didn't know where to attack it. So,
What were your emotions, Jeff? Were you angry at first, or were you in tears? How did you react to this?
I didn't believe it for a little bit. I think I went through all the emotions that are with death, and I can say I had them all. I mean, I was mad at one point. I was disbelief is what I remember the most. In my family, my father was a banker. I'm a banker, and it's not like we're out working out a whole lot. And it just amazed me that one of the things that Dwight was so well known for was his athletic ability. That was what was attacked, and that's what was taking him down. And it didn't compute. It just didn't compute.
You mentioned that dinner table. What did you bring to the dinner table, or was it Dwight, or was it Mom, or was it Dad? What did everyone bring to that table?
Well, I would like to think everybody brought something to the table, but my parents ran the show, and I was 6 years younger than my brother. So when he was a senior in high school, this was all up until his senior year in high school. When he was a senior, I was in 6th grade. So I would like to say I brought something to the table. I'm not sure I brought a whole lot. but I did enjoy listening to the conversations because it was normal at our house. Dwight was an amazing athlete. I mean, in high school, looking back, I mean, he was a man playing with boys, it looked like, and very good at everything he did. And I always thought that was normal. And I attribute my parents for that, actually. I knew he was good at what he did. I didn't understand how good he was. And I never knew I was not. Because my parents were as many of my games as they were his. And I played baseball in college, and I didn't know that I was not good until I didn't get drafted. So I really attribute my parents, and I've asked my father before when I had children and I was raising my children. I said, how do you do this? I mean, how do you instill that kind of that thought process that's just there? I don't remember my father sitting down and saying, okay, your brother is, really good, and you've got to do your best. And it was always, I thought we were the same. Yeah. I mean, for years and years, that was my opinion of the whole Clark household. But it's my parents. It was just the way they raised children.
On the outside, it seems like we knew Dwight as this phenomenal athlete, charming guy, caring guy. But how do you see him? What do you know that maybe the public doesn't know as well?
My whole life, I was asked, what is it like to be Dwight Clark's little brother? And I always had the same answer. It was pretty cool. I mean, it was really cool. I suppose I should tell cool stories about how he used to secretly beat me up or things like that. He did make me tough, I'll tell you that. He did. We wrestled a lot, and of course he'd always let me win because he was a lot bigger than me at that time. But the only thing secretly he did in my life was protect me, and I didn't know that for many years. If some older kid in the neighborhood was picking on me, somehow that stopped, and I didn't know why. I never knew why until 20 years later. But Dwight might have a little talk with that person, and that went away. But if there was a situation where I needed to learn something, one time he made me fight a guy because he said, it's time for you to stand up. But he said to himself, it's time for you to stand up for yourself. So he said, you hit him or I'll hit you. So here I go. And I learned a lot from that. I learned how to stand up for myself.
Who have you lost here? Is it a brother? Is it a soulmate? Is it a friend? Who have you lost in Dwight Clark?
A laundry list. He and I actually had, over the last 10 years, have gotten very close. We talked 3 times a week, 2 times a week, something like that. And we would bounce ideas off of each other, things that are coming up in our lives. We were able to do that. And to try to encapsulate what my entire relationship with my brother is, I don't know if there's enough adjectives. I mean, he was my mentor, my coach, my bodyguard sometimes, my trainer. But at the end of the day, in our house, blood means something. And I thought of this the other day, there's not another person on this earth that has the exact same blood that I do, and it was Dwight. And our family was painfully loyal to each other, And that came again from my parents, and my brother and I really loved that about our family.
How do you move forward now?
I would consider myself a failure if I did not continue the positive way that Dwight attacked life, and to sit and sulk and mourn for longer than is necessary, and I don't know what that definition is, but it's not just a shame. It would be a failure if I didn't pick up that torch and keep that love of life and that love of family burning and growing every day.
It's really well said. Where were you when you got the call, or at the exact moment? Do you remember?
I was.
Do you mind talking about it?
No, that's fine. I had visited actually the week prior, and he was actually doing well comparatively,
Yeah.
and we left that weekend, and during that next week, he really went down. I talked to a physician that said, out there, his physician, I think, and he said it's not uncommon for ALS patients to have a steady decrease over time, and then at some point it really drops. So I was there 8 days before he died. We went out and played golf. I mean, he rode beside us, and we played 6 or 7 holes, and he just wanted to. When I was coming, he called me specifically and told me to bring my clubs so we could go out there, and we left on Sunday. I think that next Friday around that, we were told that they had called hospice in, which didn't compute to me to 5 days before, or but he really, his health had fallen so fast. The doctor actually told me, he said I'm not convinced that he didn't really suck it up one more time so he could see you. And who knows if that's the case. So I got a call that Monday that he had passed away. And he was comfortable. That was a big deal for Dwight. They did keep him very comfortable during that. And I know there's different stages and different ways to attack ALS. And I will say that while he was alive, every day he was alive, I prayed that there would be some sort of discovery that at a minimum would stop this disease. Then I would pray that we could get something that would reverse it. And I prayed that hard every day in hopes of that. But I will tell you, when I got the news that he passed away, I had such a sense of relief, because if you spent any time at all with my brother, to see him in that shell of a body that he was in was torture for him. I mean, much less someone who had experienced him at his highest and his full of lifeness, which, he still had that in his eyes. He still had all that fire and all. But if you knew Dwight, you knew he wasn't happy. And I am so thankful that he never experienced full paralysis. His brother's opinion is that he would not have done well with that.
Jeff Clark the brother, so who's Joe Montana to Dwight Clark?
Joe Montana is the greatest quarterback in the history of the NFL. Plain and simple. He's a guy who had a very special bond from day one. And I know Dwight relied on Joe a lot. I mean, guidance on the field, and if you ever asked Dwight what he missed most when he retired, he didn't miss Monday morning after a Sunday game when you're going to the doctor, and you know, he didn't miss any of that. He missed the locker room, and so much of that was Joe Montana and Ronnie Lott. And there's a laundry list. I'm afraid to say names because I'll leave somebody out, but there's something about that organization. I've talked to I've gotten so many phone calls actually from other guys that played in the NFL in the time frame that Dwight was playing. And they say that, you know, the team that they played for, I mean, they played 10, 11 years for teams, and they said they never hear from them. And it's Joe, it's Ronnie, it's Eddie D, really. Eddie is the guy that put the team together and created that chemistry and that love for each other that when you played for the 49ers, the guys that are on the team right now are just as familiar with anybody that's ever played because they're all family. They're all very close. And if you could put that in a bottle and sell it, that's the key. But Joe was a part of that mix. Joe was when we would watch games, it was almost hopeful that we were losing at the end of the game just to watch what he's going to do. And that's that kind of magic. When Dwight ended up after playing and going into the front office, he used to tell me that there's people that scare him in the NFL when they're playing because they have that something that Joe Montana had. Doug Flutie was one. There's no way he should win, but he won. And he won not necessarily with X's and O's and block and tackle stuff. He just had that it. And Joe Montana, that's him in a nutshell. He just happens to be a great player. He just wins. And what else can you ask for? And Dwight loves a winner.
Where were you for the catch?
I was a freshman in college, and I was at the University of North Carolina at Wilmington. And I missed the end of the game. You know, there was some more game after that, after the catch. Kind of important stuff.
Yeah.
Lawrence Pillars.
Script, Pillars.
Lawrence Pillars, you know, caused the fumble, and Jim Stuckey from Clemson fell on it. Hicks with the fingernail tackle that I missed all of that until, you know, a week later, or, you know, several days later when I saw it on TV. Because when he made that catch, I was in a dorm at the time I was playing baseball there, and we were in an athletic dorm, and there was a group of people out in the hallway, and I ran all the way down there and dove on top of them. We ended up in a big pile, and so it was a good day. It was a good day.
You mentioned Joe at length. What does Eddie D mean? What did he mean to Dwight?
I had written a note to Mr. D one time recently, and I told him that how much that he meant to Dwight, and that Dwight had always referred to him. It was like having a big brother. And I told Mr. D, I said, well, from someone that has a big brother, I highly recommend that job because it's not bad. The things that Mr. DeBartolo has done for my family, and it's immeasurable. It's absolutely immeasurable. The opportunity that he's given my brother, the trust that he put in my brother, being the general manager with Carmen being the president. I mean, Dwight loved Eddie DeBartolo 100% as much as he did any family. And now this is coming from someone who just said how important blood is. And I think Mr. DeBartolo understood the level of passion and the level of loyalty that was in my brother's bones. And Mr. DeBartolo strikes me as one that to go into business with him, he has to have a level of trust. And I think he could see that very clearly in my brother. And I will tell you that comes from my mom and dad. My father was, he was strict, but not crazy strict, until you did something stupid. And he had very little patience for that. And one of the biggest things in that is you do not mess with family. That was my dad. And that's just the way we were brought up. That's the only thing we ever knew. And I think that's why Dwight was so liked in the locker room, because you know, he played in a time where if you had on his jersey, you know, he'd give you a kidney. If you had on another jersey, he'd just soon run over you with a car. I mean, it was just that time. That's the way it was in that. And I think, well, I hope Mr. D saw that in him. I know they had a very close, very special relationship, and I loved to watch Dwight talk about Mr. D, because he lit up like a kid when he would talk about. He just loved him. Dwight loved Mr. DeBartolo so deeply, so deeply.
A couple more questions. Do you still talk to Dwight? Is he watching? Or what's your? How do you go through this now?
You know, that's a very timely question. I'm still at that stage that when I hear something funny or I see something that only Dwight would get, I'm still guilty of reaching for the phone, and then it hits you again all over again. But yeah, I talk to him and my parents every day. I still need advice. I hope I'm listening properly.
Get mad at what's happening with Dwight and other football players in terms of head injuries? Do you even want to go there and think about that? And
well,
you could have a conversation with Roger Goodell or something.
Yeah, I would yield to what Dwight's stance was the whole time. I think he would always say, we need to do more research on injuries. We do need to do that. But Dwight will tell you, he said, I signed up for this. I mean, I chose to do this. I knew what I was getting into. So if there is a reason to think that that this sport could increase the chances, then I think we owe it to everybody to continue to do research on this and see what we can do about it. There's still not a cause defined yet, so I mean, all we have right now is statistics of who is getting it, who is not, and from what I've read, there's not a rhyme or reason yet to who is getting it. So I I hope there's a continuation of looking into this. I heard an interview that Joe Montana, he said he could fix tomorrow. He says, we'll never have another concussion in the league. He says, you take the face mask off. He said, nobody's going to stick their face in there.
Especially if you look like Dwight and Joe.
Well, that's right.
Eddie said that he goes, I asked him, hey, tell me about Dwight and Joe's relationship. He goes, they were like husband and wife. And I don't know who was who.
Oh, Joe tells a story that Dwight didn't unpack. Have you heard that?
No.
During when he was drafted, he never unpacked because he knew he was going to get cut. Just knew it. Of course, he was drafted in the 10th round. They don't even have 10 rounds anymore. Right. So anyway, it was a beautiful, stars lining up right. Dwight's last game in college when he played for Clemson was against Ohio State in the Gator Bowl when Woody Hayes hit the guy from Clemson.
Yeah.
That was Dwight's senior year. And Danny Ford was coaching, and it was Danny Ford's first game, I believe. Charlie Pale was the coach that had gone to Florida. It's been a long time ago, forgive me. But Danny Ford's first game, and he told Dwight when he got drafted, Sam White called Dwight, and he said, you've been drafted in the NFL. Have you ever been to the Bay Area? And Dwight said, Tampa Bay? Because this was 1979. He said, no, man, San Francisco. He said, yes, sir, Danny Ford, his college coach, told him, he said, if you'll go out there, he says, you're really fast, Dwight. If you'll go out there and run everywhere, you be the first guy to the water fountain, you be the first guy in the huddle, the first guy out, they'll see your hustle, and you might be able to tell your kids you played 1 year in the NFL. And that was his plan. He was going to go play. He brought his golf clubs. He wanted to play Pebble Beach. And he thought he'd play 1 year and he would go back and coach football at our high school, which later became my high school too. But fate had another idea.
His plans got changed.
Worked out pretty well.
It worked out okay.
He was the guy you wanted on your team. He's the guy you wanted in the locker room, who you knew had your back, and wanted to win badly. He knew when to hug you, and he knew when to give you a nice kick in the seat of the pants. And he was a guy you could trust. And I think that will be his legacy. There is so much more than the catch. I would like for him to be remembered for the guy that got drafted in the 10th round that wasn't supposed to make it, that worked himself into the right spot at the right time and willed himself to be a winner. I mean, he had the flu the day he caught the catch. And it was just sheer will. He wanted to be out there. So it's hard to not think of the catch when you think of him. But I would hope that people remember that, I mean, he didn't get up one morning and eat a biscuit and run out there and make that catch. So the drive and the instincts and the will to win is what made all that happen. Joe had a little bit to do with it, of course, but I could say all the same things about Joe Montana and probably everybody on that field.